Hello, everyone. I know this is a little bit weird, but I'm glad that I can still present. I am actually in beautiful Sorrento right now. Hopefully, by the time you get this, I should be in Rome, though. So I hope you have a great last class, and I hope you find what I'm about to talk about really interesting or at least useful, if not interesting, because I've been spending a lot of time on this topic and I tried to keep it sort of simple in this presentation. So I'm talking about making a curriculum relatable, and I kind of use that word in my own way, as Dr. Colombo might remember. Um, so let's just talk about what the heck relatable is and what I mean by making a curriculum itself relatable. Um, so what is relatable? And I have two columns here, and they're sort of synonymous, but in the left column, I was talking about sort of just a normal descriptor, and in the other column here, I have like over here. I don't know if you can see my mouse. I hope so. Um, so these words are more educational, you may notice. So let's start over here. Relatable in terms of curriculum is something that's going to be familiar to students. In other words, it is talking about their prior knowledge, or we're linking something that we're learning to their prior knowledge. It's also going to be interesting to them, which is when we put interesting and content together, that means that it's going to be engaging most likely for the student. Now, as differentiated instruction and science and research and everything tells us, what's interesting differs for each student. So that means that this is hopefully going to be something that's dynamic. That's what I have in my mind anyway. Also something that's entertaining, and I realize that not all education needs to necessarily be entertaining, but at the same time, bread and circuses for students as well as everybody else. So, and I love the little Roman reference. I hope you enjoyed it. So something that's entertaining and involves the content is going to have an effect on student motivation. Do I want to do this? Do I want to learn this? Why do I want to do this? Why do I want to learn this? And hopefully that turns into, I do want to do this. I do want to learn this. And that's my hope, that it makes that progression. Whoops, sorry. And then intriguing, something that makes the student want to know more. I know that sounds sort of like motivation, like the last one, but in education terms, I'm talking about something that makes students ask questions and turning this into an inquiry-based thought or theory or theme, or I guess curricular topic would be fine for this presentation. And then the last one, something that's relative to each student, which means it's applicable to their life, which ties back to motivational and engaging. If something ties to their life, something that they know, which goes back to prior knowledge as well, then they will be engaged and want to ask questions. So I believe I just tied applicable to all of these. So that is my hope, that everything ties together when I'm talking about putting content and relating to students, making content relatable, in other words. I hope that it becomes dynamic like this. It includes all of these educational ideas. How does it promote learning? I talked about that a little bit on the last slide. So I wanted to bring these terms from the last slide, since it does tie into my little definition of what is relatable. And I've said this once already, I think, but all of this is happening at an intersection with like 5 or 6 different roads coming together, and and hopefully with coming together like that, we can promote learning in general and have some better results and improve understanding, even though that's sort of a vague statement, to improve understanding. So I'm talking about the intersection of content, inquiry, understanding, applications, and connections. That's a lot of stuff, but it's something that I think should be involved in learning all the time. All of these 5 things should be involved in learning, and I'm not the only one that thinks that. So my paper will reflect those same ideas. The other people that maybe thought content and inquiry go together, but I didn't find anyone to link these exact 5. So that shows, I guess, a gap in the research, and which makes a case for me wanting to look at this. So I would, like I said, I want to talk about how content and inquiry work together, taking what is in the standards, what is present in the curriculum, and tying inquiry to it with essential questions, like we've been talking about a lot, but also getting the students to inquire, and maybe having an essential question linked to student inquiry as well as just inquiry itself about the topic. I don't know if that made sense, but so also content and understanding, I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. Application, I think, is a big deal. So many times we sort of say that we're applying the knowledge by giving a worksheet, or, well, I say we loosely. I don't use a lot of worksheets, but tying content to application means something different to different teachers, and I learned that as I move on in my career here. But application to certain teachers is applying the notes that were given the day before with a worksheet today. To me, that's not what application is. Real application is applying something to the real world that you're learning in class. And my hope with a relatable curriculum is that we take it one step further and we apply the content to the student's life or the student's interests or the student themselves in order to apply that same content to the real world. I think it'll make more sense, something that you understand to begin with, helping you understand something new, and then use something new in the world. That is my hope. So also, I had to put connections in here because this idea of a relatable curriculum turns into a naturally integrated curriculum, which is what I'm finding, but it isn't a traditionally integrated curriculum. It's different. I found a few sources about a continuum of integrated curricula, and it was really, really interesting. And what I'm talking about doesn't really fall anywhere specifically on that continuum. It falls somewhere in between a few of them. So I do want to show the connections between different disciplines by introducing something that's relatable. Okay, so one thing relating to another, that's a connection. So I take content about the Roman Empire and I connect it to a student's background, which helps them apply it and understand it and ask new questions about it and in general learn about it more. That's what I want. And if you didn't notice, I just tied connections to all 4 of the ones above it, and again, showing that it's dynamic in nature. So, I want to talk about relatable curriculum and instructional design. How can it fit in here? Well, I have 3 ways, one of which hopefully Dr. Colomba can recognize really quickly. The first one, relatable examples, which is what my research is on for my graduate work. So, and that is with my advisor, Dr. Colombo. So, like I said, I hope she recognizes that. But also, I think we can go farther than just examples, which I'll come back to in a second, but relatable assignments and relatable assessments as well. So, relatable examples put the content into a context that is relatable to the student. And I've said that a couple times. So I'm thinking about math here in particular for my research. So let's use math as a quick example. I'm teaching low-level math students different geometry concepts. So when I teach them about right angles and the properties that go with right angles, I'm going to need to take that and relate it to something the students understand in their daily life. Okay, so maybe that means Twitter, that means something that's going on like the Super Bowl or the Olympics, or maybe a current news story that they're all really interested in, that's got their attention. And maybe on the surface it doesn't seem like right angles can connect to that, but I think it's my job to make those connections. And being a Latin teacher, I've gotten a lot of experience making connections to pretty much anything. Native Americans and Latin is hard. That's the only one that's hard with Latin, but that I've come across. But anyway, back to math. That's what I'm talking about with a relatable example. So explaining or showing the students how to do a certain operation using those relatable topics, be it the current events or the current event, current events as in an event that's happening or as in news that's happening. Like I talked about before, I think would be really beneficial for these students that are lower level math students to really grab onto the concepts a little bit more and run with them. And that's what I want to see. Does it help? Does it change anything? Does it allow them to apply it better? And we'll get to my research questions in one second, but relatable assignments, because I'm kind of running out of time, allows exploration to be relatable to the student. So I consider assignments a time for students to explore what I've told them in the ways that I've showed them how to do it, but maybe taking it a step further, adding some creativity, adding some personal flair, whatever it may be. But I don't want to create an assignment like a travel brochure if they have no possible way to relate to travel. Maybe these students have never been out of the county in which I'm teaching, and they have no way to connect to that. I don't want to do those sorts of things. I want to know what will work for my students, and in that way it is similar to differentiation. And the last way it could fit into an instructional design is relatable assessments. So creating an assessment that a student can actually relate to, maybe just creating a situation, a word problem that they can grasp the context for, would be more beneficial. It would give them, allow them to identify with the problem a little bit more, maybe want to figure it out. And there's the motivation piece, the engagement piece that I was talking about before. I think this will be the hardest out of the three to implement. Now, I only have a minute left. So relatable assessments, I think it's going to create a familiar and relative situation for assessing student learning. And I use the word situation because, like I said, maybe I use a word problem, maybe I use a topic that we talked about, like an example that we used in class, but I use it in a different way. I ask a different question about it than I did in class. You know, I wouldn't want to put an exact example on the test, but let's go to my relatable examples research. I have 2 research questions for that, and they definitely need some work. So don't judge me too harshly yet. So the first one, after implementing examples that model mathematics concepts in the real world, will students be able to make connections from mathematics to the real world independently? So I want to know if they can start inquiring for themselves and saying, that looks kind of familiar.